this, I just want to thank you because I probably wouldn't have had the foundation that I did. They were great lessons and it taught me a lot about music theory and practicing and I really excelled a lot more than most of the others that were around me at the time because of it. And it also helped give me the foundation before I went to college for music,
I appreciate it. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's awesome, man.
I appreciate that you studied my stuff. And I have to say, it's always difficult for me to tell exactly how effective my stuff is, especially considering that it's not necessarily a reflection on me, whether people like you get it and study and learn. It's all about you. I make my stuff available to you. I would say that people like you might be 1 out of 100 because it's very difficult for people to be self-motivated.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid I'm learning that with the Zoom lessons that I started doing a year ago. I did Skype lessons 10 years ago, and then I just stopped doing it for a while because, quite frankly, I got a bit discouraged.
Yeah.
And this time around, I felt like, well, I've got this set up where I've got different cameras show you my picking hand, fretting hand, I can switch to shit,
That's awesome, man.
There's a lot of technology available that wasn't available 10 years ago,
Yeah.
including all the information on YouTube that is done so much better now than it was then. So many things are happening.
Right.
But I have found that regardless of what I do as an instructor, and I try and I do the best I can, but people get set in their ways.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier when you're 16 years old because you have no ways to be set in,
Yeah.
as you were.
I was actually like 13, so I was,
Okay, yeah.
it
So,
was
so
fun.
you don't have these habits. But
Yeah.
when the people that I teach right now are typically 40 or above, and they're familiar with me from my lessons from many, many years ago and everything. So they have developed these habits, and it's really hard to take someone out of this is the way I practice
Yeah.
guitar. I no longer play with other people and all
Yeah.
these other things. And it's really hard to break through that.
Yeah.
And success is fleeting. I have more people cancel lessons than I have actually attending them. So
You think that's out of
I
there?
really have more respect for people like you from doing this to see, you took it and you ran with it, where it's just as easy to get through, the first couple lessons and go, well, I'll get to this at a later date. But, so you're to be commended also.
I want to elaborate on that a little bit then.
Sure.
I think, I already had the discipline because I was, an athlete, before that, and also an artist. So, I was attention to detail, doing art and pushing myself as an athlete, which, I think, playing guitar is, somewhat athletic, I mean, if you practice, my hands would feel like they were like Hercules, So I liked that challenge and I already had kind of the discipline and all that music really did is help me to really gain my focus and to put that, discipline and everything that I learned from other areas, to a particular focus in mind and a goal. And as a result of that, I really excelled and developed, at a personal level, even more so with music because of many, many reasons. I could talk about music therapy and stuff, but, and I know you can relate, getting into that
Sure.
zone and everything. But so I think I already had that kind of drive to begin with. And I also used to write, this is another reason why I decided to do this because I used to read interviews of guys like Steve Vai and other artists, and my attitude was that if I adopt the attitude of my idols, then I will be approaching it with a professional attitude, when I play. So
Hmm.
I used to write down on 3x5 cards quotes from people like Steve Vai, which really got his attention to do this. But and then I would memorize that, and then when I approach playing guitar, I'd think, okay, well, this is what my idols are doing, and this is their attitude, this is their approach, and that's what I would do. For example, somebody like Jeff Watson used to have that column in Guitar Magazine, and he'd always say at the end of the lesson, he'd be like, practice, practice, practice. So I never forgot that, and I approached playing guitar constantly, and being attention to detail and doing it right and practicing until my fingers, and so it's guys like you and your attitudes and your approach and everything that really helped me to start out on a uh, good path, and with good habits. And
Excellent.
so I can totally relate to what you're saying, when you get people that are like in their 40s, and, the money's great teaching. I taught for like 20 years too, myself, private instruction. But it's not worth it to me when I feel like I'm just taking their money and they come back 2 weeks later and still don't even remember.
I,
You
I
know,
know
I'd rather
that's
just tell them,
discouraging.
yeah, I've
I
told
have to say, there was a time a few weeks ago where I was thinking about throwing in the towel, but then I thought, you know what? Um, not all of them, uh, not all of them take away from this what I wish they would. I don't feel like I'm reaching all of them, but I am reaching some of them.
yeah, that makes
And I enjoy the social aspect of it. I don't have a lot of things going on in my life socially. I play golf with some buddies that I've known for 40 years, 1 day a week. And for me, socially, that's about it, aside from my few Zoom lessons.
so it's your
So,
opportunity.
I enjoy shooting the shit with people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can relate to you. It's when you get those, few that really have that spark that make it worthwhile.
Absolutely.
And at least for me,
Absolutely.
and I want to put 100% into helping these kids when
Uh-huh.
they have that spark. And I've helped, a few, but
Sure.
it's very self-rewarding, and I used to love teaching, but I kind of got burnt out on it for the reasons that we're talking about.
Well, that's what got me started with Metal Method in the first place. I was giving private guitar lessons and not making very much money and teaching the same songs over and over and over again, and quite frankly, kind of getting bored with guitar as a result. So I just decided to put together a program, do it one time, and do it to the best of my ability, and put it out. And at the encouragement of my students, they liked how I taught and what I taught, and so I put it out. And as they say, the rest is history, but it took off right away. And it was successful from the beginning. And the process, of course, after that has been every few years, technology changes and my knowledge changes. The music and so on and so forth changes to a certain extent. And I revise my lessons. And I've done that a half dozen times or more.
First of all, how did you first get into playing and creating music? What drew you to heavy metal in particular?
What drew me into heavy metal, I remember when I first started playing guitar when I was, oh, I don't know, 12, 13, somewhere around there, and I got my first amplifier. Uh, I was disappointed when I heard what reverb was because I didn't know, it's like I knew a sound that I wanted to hear, which was distortion, and I didn't know what it was or how to get it. And when I got my amplifier and turned on the reverb, it's like, no, that's not what I want. I needed to get my new wah pedal that was a wah pedal that had distortion with it. That's the sound that I like. So I was always attracted to the distorted sound. So that was the beginning. And I probably, being as old as I am, a lot of my influence was the Beatles. And there were a very, very few heavy songs by the Beatles, but I was attracted to uh, what was the one? What was the song that Helter Skelter?
Nice.
That was probably their heaviest song ever. Okay, then in I don't know '68, something like that. I remember walking. I believe it was home from school, not that it makes a difference. And I heard across the street someone playing on their radio uh, a sound like I'd never heard before, and it was Jimi Hendrix all along the Watchtower. So I got started there. And then the next heavy thing that I remember is I was in an art class in high school, and a guy was playing a record, and the kid was sitting by me that was very much into soul music and such was going, man, that stuff is shit. And just to get along with him, I said, yeah, I don't like that either, but I'm listening to it, and it's like, I love this. Who is this? And it was Led Zeppelin, first time I heard Zeppelin. So that was my path. And I still enjoy all forms of music. It sure doesn't have to be heavy. Probably most of what I listen to right now is not that heavy. And what I try to teach with my lessons right now is not heavy stuff, because it's like if you're going to go out in a bar and you're going to get a job, you're not going to be playing Iron Maiden
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, that's true.
You're going to be playing,
Top 40.
some, yeah, top 40 classic rock type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people to learn that along with their favorite tunes. So, but I appreciate all forms of music. It's like even then, it was like I like Jimi Hendrix and I like Neil Young.
Yeah.
Not a lot in common, but
You were
so
more obviously drawn toward heavy metal, right? As far as playing and performing goes. I mean, you were in a band
yeah,
called Hawk, right?
right.
I
And we
kind
were definitely heavy, but possibly heavier than I really was at the time. Um, um, yeah, I mean, the guys that I was playing with were 10 years younger than me, and they were much more into super heavy music. I mean, what was my favorite for much of my early music was not just Hendrix, but Robin Trower.
right.
And it's more of a psychedelic blues than actually super heavy, heavy metal. Uh, and that was more my music. But I'm older, my generation is from the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, Hendrix and Zeppelin and so on and so forth. So, but at the same time, when I played with Hawk in the mid '80s, music was heavier at that time. I was into this, I was into Motley Crue and Rat and all the stuff, Ozzy stuff and everything. So I was into that too. But we tend to, our musical taste is formed in high school, and I don't know that we move radically beyond that, although we can appreciate other kinds of music. There's, what we experienced in high school. You got the AC/DC the t-shirt on there. You know what I mean.
Absolutely. It was the era following, what was going on at that time in music. And that was a big portion of the industry back then was metal, hard rock, Motley Crue.
Hey, I listened to Power Age from beginning to end last night.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love Bon Scott,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean I love Brian Johnson too, but if I had
Yeah,
this between the two, I prefer Bon Scott.
yeah, I do too.
The next question I have here is can you describe your process for creating guitar instructional material? How do you break down complex techniques into accessible lessons?
I have kind of an engineer brain where it's very step by step as well as I teach myself.
Yeah,
And anytime I learn to do something, I have a whole list for myself, step by step, how to do it. I update my checklist and I move stuff around because, with all the technology available today, you work with technology that you haven't worked with in 6 months, you better have a checklist because you're going to forget a large percentage of it, and it will come back quickly, but without a checklist, it won't. So basically, outline. I outline, this is what I want to cover, and all of my stuff is scripted. I am probably a writer more than I'm anything else, and I will take my script and go through it 25 times.
Oh, it's like
Keep
natural.
going through it until I don't leave out anything, you know. As I keep going through it, it's like, oh yeah, and I put that in, and then that in, and let's move this around. And when I can go through it from beginning to end, and there's nothing to add to it, I consider it completed. But I can go through it over and over and over and over and keep moving, editing, rewording, making it clear. One thing that I'm very, very big on is making things unambiguous. Because a lot of times when you say them or those or refer to this or that, it can be very confusing what you're talking about. So I try to make it unambiguous by constantly referring to exactly what I'm talking about instead of, something that can confuse them into thinking that I'm talking about something else. So anyway, real methodical, real step by step, real make it lean, spend time cutting out stuff, sometimes more than adding to it.
Yeah.
Streamline, give myself a page instead of allowing myself to rant on for 3 pages. Or if I rant on for 3 pages, I have to reduce it to 1 page with the best elements. So, doing this for as long as I've done it, you get pretty good at it. And mainly what I'm good at, really, I think more than playing guitar or anything else, is these instructions and writing them and writing the stuff out, as well as writing it in a way that hopefully is interesting.
And easily understood, because, when I went to college music and having a foundation already in music theory and everything, because I not only took, the lessons that, from Metal Method, but I also from a lot of other people.
Sure.
And I realized that the teacher may have understood herself what she was teaching, but the way that she was explaining it was confusing to a lot of the other students because she didn't know how to explain it, and as a result of that, a lot of the kids were confused, and unfortunately, I already had the foundation, so I ended up becoming a tutor, music tutor at the college. And
Well, something that's very helpful for me is I've always gotten feedback. If I write something that's not clear, in my next version of the lesson, I make it clear. And so a lot of what I've done that makes it accessible to my students comes from my students. Great questions that they ask me. Even before I did Mental Method, what led me in the direction of teaching as I teach was questions from my students one-on-one. And then, the technology early on was they would write me letters, It seems very ancient now because people don't do that anymore. But my interaction with students until 1995, and I had my first online forum, was snail mail, the old-fashioned United States postal system. But then in 95, that was a big turning point for me because now I'm finally getting instant feedback from students on the things that I'm doing. So, and it's progressed from there.
Yeah.
I do a YouTube video now and put it out and get comments initially. I mean, comments immediately. But one of the problems is I don't get as much of a critical conversation. I get a lot of, hey, I took your lessons in the 80s and thank you very much, which I really appreciate a lot. But it doesn't help the discussion of what I've put in the video for the discussion to turn into I help people, which is great. And it always makes me feel excellent. But it's not quite like the forum. The forum, when I had that, it was a discussion of ideas, whatever the topic was, we were on topic. Now the conversation on YouTube, I miss it not being that forum type of exchange.
Obviously, you've had to, adapt your teaching methods over the years with
Sure.
technology. One of the biggest things that, is it could be, detrimental or positive toward music is AI. Now you're talking about how you're very methodical on how you construct the lessons. One of the things that I've learned through dabbling with AI, just for research purposes, is that it helps to really help you get your thoughts organized to a chronological order, which I'm guilty of using it for. I mean,
Oh, I use AI daily.
I'll take my own thoughts, of course, but it helps me to organize, in a very logical, chronological order of how to present something. One thing that it lacks is that obviously it lacks the personal input, I guess, if you were to rely on it completely, So I strictly limit it to organization, and the rest of it is my own wording. I could actually just sit there and be like, "Hey, write a whole entire book," and, and get rely on it. I That's what I'm worried about is that I'm going to get lazy, and I think that's a disadvantage of AI because people get lazy with their creativity. That scares me for the future of the music industry.
I use AI much different than you do. I really don't use it for writing at all. Uh, what I use AI for is I work on a lot of different things that are technical.
Yeah.
It's better than the manual, typically. So most of what I use AI, when I said I use it every day, that's probably not an exaggeration. It's like I find that, if there's something that I don't understand about an app program that I'm using, I ask AI, and it's amazing that whether it's Guitar Pro or whatever, as
Yeah.
obscure as it might be, it will give me step-by-step things to try. Now, the downside is it's going through a lot of information that is outdated. So some of the times, maybe even most of the time, when it gives me the instructions, they're not quite right, but it leads me in the right direction. So the menus have changed in the program or whatever. I'm able to take what AI gives me and search for stuff a little bit and
At least
get the answer that I'm looking for. And it really, really streamlines the things that I'm working on. Stuff that I used to struggle to learn,
yeah.
I'm able to learn very, very quickly now. And I appreciate that aspect of it. And to tell you the truth, I don't even think that much about AI cutting into the music business. Um, I understand how it could, and I understand how you could tell to write a Beatles song about this particular subject and it would use chord changes and so on and so forth. And I would probably listen to the song, identify it as a Beatles song, and maybe even like it. But what I said about I'm not going to a concert to watch AI perform that music, that would be silly.
Yeah.
Uh, so it doesn't have that aspect, and I hate to say won't ever, but I don't see anything like that happening in my lifetime as far as the live performance, the interaction, spontaneous between musicians and so on and so forth. So I don't think a lot about it, but I do really appreciate how it helps me to do things so much faster myself. Uh, if I don't want to write a bass part, I use Easy Bass, which arguable whether it's AI or not, but it really is because it constructs bass parts according to my instructions. So it's really AI, but man, it's so much better. I don't really have an interest in writing a really cool bass part, but I want a really cool bass part. So I love having what it can do with drums and what it can do with bass parts for me to write my music over top of it so I can create something in maybe a day, whereas if I didn't have that, it might take me 2 weeks to do it, and I might get burned out, and it would never materialize as a result. So there are so many advantages to
Yeah,
AI that I
that's
have to look the other way when it comes to the negative things that
yeah,
you're pointing out.
that's what I'm struggling with because I can see how I can see a lot of the benefits and the advantages, such as learning things a lot quicker, which I've used it for too. I'll take a book that I've read and I'll have the thing like literally just summarize it in key points. So they're the points that I really focus on so I could understand it, you know? Like if I'm learning a new DAW, you know, like Pro Tools or something like
Hmm.
that, it could break it right down for me and just skip all the bullshit, get right to the point, what I need to learn and memorize, and that's been very helpful. So yeah, I've been struggling with it because of the positive advantages of it too. I just think that there needs to be some kind of regulation. But as far as writing songs, I can relate to you on that too, like a bass part or bass line. I'm not a vocalist, so you know I could write the music, but it's nice to have AI produce a melody and a vocal line for me. You know, taking my lyrics,
Sure.
give me like 10 different melodies I could choose from, and so I come to the conclusion that that it should be used as a tool to help you to develop things that you know you've already used your creative mind with, and then at the same time you can get creative with AI because of you have to direct it, you know, to tell it what you want it to do. It's not like it. I mean, you could just sit back and say, write a hit song for me in the style of the Beatles, and voila, you know. But that's you know, as a musician, and I know you can relate. I mean, that's not what we want to do. We want
Yeah.
control over our creativity. So that's where the input comes into it, and that's when it becomes a tool as a tool for us to utilize it. And so, yeah, as a former teacher and an instructor myself, I can completely relate to you. You know, in the early days of Metal Method, how did you use technology or lack thereof to develop or distribute your courses?
When I read this question, the first piece of technology that made a huge difference to me was I bought a computer for a couple $1,000, and I had a 72 VW that I was still driving at the time. I remember putting that in the back seat of my car, and it was worth way more than my car was worth at the time. And I had never touched a computer until I got it home. Well, when I got it home, one of the first things that I learned how to do was start programming a database, DBase 2. It came free with this computer, and I needed something to organize my mailing list. I had all these letters and everything in there, but I wasn't able to take advantage of it and send mailings to people, and no organization and everything. So the very first thing I did with my computer was enter all these names and addresses in there. And then the next thing was there was so much information. There's all these floppy drives, and this is the technology of the time. The floppy drives didn't hold hardly anything. So I needed a hard
Like
drive, which was no, people didn't know what that was back then. I spent $2,400
a hard drive?
on a two, no, 20 megabyte, not gigabyte. I spent $2,400 on a 20 megabyte hard drive. I put all my floppies into there. So now I had my mailing list, 40,000 people all in there, and I could finally utilize it, reach these people, and know who my customers are, look them up,
That's
all this other
awesome.
stuff.
I mean, that's
And then
smart.
I pressed the button to organize them. And I didn't know how long it was going to take. And after a day, this is true, after a day, I called the guy that I bought this hard drive from, and I said, should I just crash this and start again? He said, oh, no, 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 no. It's still working. It will take a while longer. Now, today, to organize these, do what it took, I can't remember, but it was about a couple days before it had finally sorted everything out and I had this list that I could use. It would take me 10 seconds or less to do the exact same thing right now. And, you know, the price of technology. So that's the type of technology I was dealing with. And of course, the biggest technological change was in 95 when I first got on the internet. Gee, I was with Prodigy before there was an AOL.
We'll take a shower, make a sandwich, brush teeth, come back, and the page is finally loaded. How's the evolution of technology from VH tapes to VHS tapes to online platforms changed the way you teach and how students learn? I mean, I think you just kind of.
Well, you know, initially when I did a video, the editing process would take days. The same thing, technology is, you know, now we do nonlinear editing.
You literally had to cut
I haven't even heard that terminology for a long time, but that's what we decided. Instead of using all these tapes and moving them around and all the crap we had to do, I mean, it would take forever. And just editing one, I would have to look at myself so much that I would think by the time the program was finished that I was some kind of monster because I'd found every flaw imaginable because I just watched it over and over and over. And now I can do a similar type of thing just so fast. Cut, 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 cut. All right. You know, so the technology has changed radically. I started out with audio cassettes. So the technology was they couldn't see me, you know. And then we went to you can see me, but very poorly because the video's crappy.
Oh, yeah.
And it's progressed. And now it's like I could do a lesson today, put it up and sell it instantly.
Yeah.
The technology
reminds me of that one with you did with Jim Gillette. The quality of that was
terrible.
Bad. Yeah.
Terrible.
But that was
all the early stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't the quality though, it was the content of that made it good, you know. And
absolutely. Just like Michelangelo Badio's first one, his first Speed Kills. Quality of it was not that good, but it was as high quality as we could have at the time. Yeah, it was content and still is.
There's, you know, everything that Jim Gillette taught in that, everything that he taught in that is exactly what you would learn if you were, you know, going to college. You know, all the solfege and stuff like that, and all the scales and stuff like that. He was definitely kind of a dork, though. But I swear to God, dude, and even my wife said that. She was like, it looks like he's got literally a sock down there, you know? As
far as I know, there was no sock, but what I do know, I don't know if Jim would mind me saying this, but he had a hernia.
Oh.
So he was a bit inflated in that area of his body, even without a sock.
Anyway, the content is great on it, you know? So let's see here. What advice do you have for aspiring musicians who want to develop their own creative voice and style?
Number one, above everything else, play with other people. Of course, copy your heroes.
Yeah.
Play with other people and play as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's everything. And that's the people that I'm teaching on Zoom, every single one of them. Play with other people. You don't need me.
Yeah. You'll learn a lot more. Just one setting or performing, playing out, you know, get out there and just play.
My most successful student over the past year, giving Zoom lessons, was a student that I've probably helped out more than anything because he actually took my recommendation. He was taking, he's a religious person. I said, why don't you join the band? He said, there's already a guitar player there. And I said, well, then why don't you play bass? Do they have a bass player? No. I said, you can learn how to play bass. As a matter of fact, this lesson, I pulled the bass off the wall, showed him a couple things. The next week he said, I have so much to learn, it's hard for me to even take your lessons anymore. After that, he quit my lessons because he's now full-time the bass player for this band. And I consider him quitting my lessons putting his two last lessons on the shelf until he had time to get to them later as my success story.
That's awesome. No, that's definitely awesome because now he's actually, doing it, and that's what it's all about. Is performing and doing that. So many musicians experience performance anxiety. Now, as a teacher, how do you help your students overcome and build confidence in their playing, like a guy that is out performing instead of taking lessons?
Well, there's two things. Obviously, like the word you said, confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence is something that is not easy to build unless people tell you how great you are. And the reason people are going to tell you how great you are on any level is because you've worked your ass off harder than the other people have. And there is this thing called talent.
Yeah.
But, inspiration, perspiration is the key. All the people that seem to be very talented also worked harder than anybody else. So that's the thing. Know your parts. Work as hard as you can. But at the same time, don't think of yourself as you're going to be performing at some big stadium or something like that. We all start off at a backyard picnic, and then we move on to something a little bit bigger. So don't think that you have to start performing someplace. That's going to give you stage fright when you move 12 levels above where you are right now. It's a gradual process. And I've thought about something else recently. And you might look into this, your research for this book and everything. But I think that most of the people, whether it's sports or music or any other endeavor, start off in a small town where they are a big fish in a small pond. If you grow up in Los Angeles, you're going to have your confidence busted early on and possibly permanently. Whereas if you're in a small town, I bet most of these people that succeed because they came from a small town and people told them how great they were from an early time to when they move into the larger town or the bigger settings. Their confidence is built up from people telling them how great they are and you're the best around and I can't believe how good you are. It's so easier to build on confidence than try to create it on down the line without anything to base it on. You have to be told how great you are many times before you start believing how great I am.
That's a great
easier
point.
with a small audience of family, friends, and then you can grow and excel.
That makes a lot of sense. That's great.
Look up in your research how many of the people that you're studying came from Los Angeles and how many of them came from, I'm from Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Yeah, I can think of a few people right off the top of my head, that are successful. They came from a small town, that, some of them, even from my area, I'm upstate New York, Albany, and so I could think of
same thing's true with sports. Typically, they start young and they start in a setting where they're only competing against people in their school and sometimes small schools. It's the same thing, and they're number one there. And sure, there's going to come a time, say in sports, when then you go to college and it's like, whoa, all these people were king of their town. What I do now, but at least you have the confidence that you instilled up to that point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you brought up, being in Los Angeles, where everybody there, everybody moves there to, hopefully become successful. And as a result of that, there's a lot of very talented people there. So that can kill your confidence if you start out right at that level, trying to be at that level, And so
and quickly along those lines, when I arrived in Los Angeles, the thing I found, I was expecting that everybody's super talented. I couldn't come in contact with any of those people because I was a nobody. And the problem that I had was quite the opposite. there are all these people that have no idea what they're doing because they're from Los Angeles and they never played in cover bands like I did. They didn't have the breeding ground to build bands like I did in small town USA. So the people that I initially worked with were just not very good musicians at all because they didn't have the experience that I had coming from this whole different background. I mean, at that age, you couldn't get paid to play anywhere in Los Angeles. You know, you couldn't play like I did in underground Atlanta 6 nights a week, 6 hours a night, week after week after week. You don't have that here. So there's a whole lot of different things. What you do is you come from that environment, then come to Los Angeles, and then you have the potential to make it.
That's a great point, Doug. Definitely. See the musical mind. From your perspective, what are the key elements of the musical mind that enable someone to become proficient? As a musician in general.
Two things. One of them, obviously, is really super loving music, but there's so many people that super love music that never even pick up an instrument. But the other thing is the curiosity. Music is a puzzle. And it's that for me, there's nothing, even at this point in my life, that I enjoy much more than sitting down with a song that I've heard for many, many years and figuring out what it is that makes it sound that way. What are the chords? What are the changes? And in almost every song that I work in, even at this period of time, possibly for two reasons. There's a lot of really good people on YouTube right now that show some of this music at a high level. And the other is my ear is so advanced compared to what it was in the past. And I have different tools of analyzing, whatever. But it's that puzzle that I probably enjoy right now more than even playing. When I can start, drop something in. Do you use Guitar Pro?
Yes, I do. Yeah, in fact, I did. I did the transcription. Remember, I transcribed all that stuff for Michael for that book.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that aspect of it. Do you have you done much with the audio track in Guitar Pro 8?
No, I have Guitar Pro 8, but I haven't.
Okay, the audio track feature of that is mind-boggling. Drag a WAV file in there, and then you can go down to the measures, listen to the kick drum, and line the measures up. Now your whole piece, even before you put one piece of tablature in there, is in sync with the Guitar Pro files. So I work out some things that are rather easy songs that I'm listening to the original music, and when I get to a part, I will just put in the parts that are difficult, the lead or the lick here and there, and make a note, even just text of here's the chords and everything. And it's all in sync, and you can play along with the original artist, and it is killer. It is huge.
Like quantizes everything, but you said
it changes the tempo of the Guitar Pro to match the recording. So I can't say it quantizes it. It's like as it changes the tempo of the song so it matches the tablature exactly. So and here's what's great about it. I'm so obviously enthusiastic about this technology because I've forgotten more songs than I've remembered. But when you put it in there like that and you have the basics of it, here's what happens. It continues to grow. It's like you don't have time to put this part in here today, but maybe you will a year from now. And I find myself as I'm playing along, I get to a certain point, like maybe the lead is typically it. And it's like, I don't even intend to work out the lead today, but I start and I can't help myself. And I'll work like 2 or 3 measures. Now with old technology, I would learn 2 or 3 measures and I'd have to learn them again tomorrow, right? But you're able to just plow away at it. And then as often as not, I'll go back and go, that's wrong. I'll correct that. So it grows. And I'll be able to, years from now, look at these things and still be able to play the song instead of forgetting it. And so it's just a fantastic technology.
I absolutely love Guitar Pro. I mean, I've used Sibelius and Finale, which they don't have anymore. They actually wrapped it up. Finale did, but yeah, I use them. But the best program that I've loved using has been Guitar Pro. I mean, obviously for guitarists, because everything's
Right.
there. And you try to do the same thing in Finale or Sibelius for guitar, and it's a headache.
Well, you'll see that audio track.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
It's a game changer, and
Yeah.
it's just as easy. You could just get started with it by just dragging it over, sitting there and listen to it, tap out what the kick drum's doing, and make it match the kick drum, and
It's
then
awesome.
take it from there. But it's so cool.
File as needed too, because a lot of those tablatures are wrong, most of them.
But at the same
But
time,
it
if
helps you
they're in
develop.
Guitar Pro, you
Yeah,
can still a wrong tablature with the track. You can
yeah.
see where it's wrong and add to it and everything, move it around. And yeah, the stuff that wasn't done through this technology is normally wrong.
It helps you to develop your ear because I've transcribed a lot of stuff for Guitar Pro on ultimateguitar.com. I just
Hmm.
put stuff up there as a challenge. I'll do all the instruments or whatever. But yeah, it definitely is. It helps to develop your ear really, and utilize your skills and knowledge, in writing or reading music too. And what do you hope that your students gain, not just musically but personally, from learning to play guitar, engage in music as a
Uh,
teacher?
I hope that they begin to see music as a language, that a language that you can sit with your drummer and your bass player and talk, converse, and do something special among you, and then share it. Use the language you're creating together to reach people,
That's
to spread the word. I mean, the reason I believe that hard rock and heavy metal have, there's not as much of an audience as there was in the mid 80s for sure. And I believe that what's happened is so many musicians, especially guitar players, have decided to, instead of writing complete songs, which actually have lyrics, are into compositions. And YouTube has driven so many people in the direction of that person did that thing that fast and that fantastic that I've got to do it even faster to get people's attention. And we've completely lost sight of the power of music, of songs, to touch people. Speed, sure, it has a place and it can take you to a different level, but speed from beginning to end goes absolutely nowhere. But to be able to uh, touch people through your music, which is a combination of the music and the lyrics and so on and so forth, uh, is powerful. And I think that we're still capable of winning Grammys and such. And I think that we still can make an incredible impact on the music world. But I think that we have to get a little bit back toward the beginning and write songs that move people instead of trying to play faster than this other guy on YouTube and do something trickier. And this time I'm going to spin my guitar around while I'm playing it. It's gotten, if they take the same discipline and effort as they put into that to writing songs that absolutely kill, that's where we need to go. That's going to change everything. And I'm still confident that it will happen, continue to happen.
That is great advice. It really is. Okay, looking back at your career, what impact do you think Metal Methods has had on the way people are learning and experience music?
Well, it's like I said about how do you build confidence. And I'm confident in what I've accomplished because people tell me every time I do something on YouTube. You know, my success is, you know, my success, other people tell me what it is and that I've made a difference for them. And I know that I made an incredible difference in many people's lives, and I also know that much of what I was doing at the time was just trying to make a living.
I'm an example
1982.
as one of the people that you inspired. So I want to thank you for that. And let's wrap this up with one last question. Do you have any advice or anything profound or anything that you would like to share with aspiring musicians that could definitely be a positive influence on them? I know you've already shared some key
Okay,
insights.
the main thing that comes to mind is, above and beyond everything else, play with other musicians, share music with other people. But, and here's the thing that I haven't mentioned up until now, most people have an excuse for not doing that. And the excuse is, I'm not ready yet. Well, there's a lot more people out there not ready than are at the top of the pyramid. There's so many people at the bottom. Regardless of how poorly you play, there are people that can play with you that either play as poor as you do or worse. And you can teach them to play music, to play along with you, even though you're better than them. So don't put up these roadblocks, because playing in your bedroom or wherever you practice in your house is usually a dead end. You don't have any goals like, I have to learn this song by Friday. I don't have to perform this at a barbecue down the street. You have no pressure on you to succeed. And so the easiest thing to do is to sit there and play the same stuff over and over again instead of learning new material. And that's the other thing. Constantly learn new stuff, and the guitar becomes new. Sit there and play the same thing in your bedroom day after day, and it's not very long before that guitar is going to be put away, and possibly for years. So that's it.
That's awesome. I can tell you've taught for a while. Wow, you've offered some really good advice. Even
Thank you.
for me that's been playing for a very long time. That's very inspiring. Everything that you've said.
Thank you. That's what I try to do.
Oh, you do a great job, Doug. And I've been following you for years. I want to thank you very much for your time and consideration. You're
It's
definitely
been fun.
awesome. Thank you so much, buddy. You take care now. Talk to
All
you
right,
soon.
bye.